We all know the life-changing nature of the sport, of course, through Free Trail. A lot of people know our sort of mission and tagline is trail running will save the world. And we want to create an event that has that energy that you can't help but feel positive, not only about the sport, but about the nature of humanity once you leave. And again, develop friendships, partnerships, new relationships that, as we know, through this sport, become some of the most important things to, us as human beings.
Welcome to Long Run Labs, a weekly podcast from the team behind For the Long Run podcast, telling the stories of those running the outdoor industry where endurance and entrepreneurship meet. And welcome back to Long Run Labs. We have Dylan Bowman and Doug Emslie of TrailCon joining today. Dylan and Doug, thanks so much for taking some time to chat today.
Pleasure.
Am I the first repeat guest on LRL here?
You are the first repeat guest on Long Run Labs. I've had Vivek on both For the Long Run and Long Run Labs, and Randy Zuckerberg on both, but you are the first to make two appearances on Long Run Labs, so welcome back.
I'm probably the first you've had from Dubai.
That's true too.
From the war zone.
That's true too. So you both are incredibly busy people with lots and lots of things going on in your lives. Today we're talking about TrailCon. And so with that lens, I'm curious, why is TrailCon and how is TrailCon something that you both are spending a lot of time and focus on?
Doug, you get us started. You're the veteran of this industry.
Well, I'm an event, professional. I mean, I've been running events for 33 years, so I'm like really old. And I first actually met Dylan in 21. And it's a long story to get to answer your question, but I think it's probably quite important in terms of the background in that, Dylan was starting off on his journey with Free Trail. And if you remember, this is coming out of the pandemic and everything that was going on in the pandemic and people having obviously more time to get out into the trails, but also a time where races were struggling to get going again and all of the COVID regulations. And I was actually training to do the Boston Marathon, which actually moved from its slot in Patriots Day in April to actually take place in October. So I was doing a long run and I was listening to Dylan talking about, setting up Free Trail and going full time. And I just sent him a DM and said, that's really interesting. I help sort of, young entrepreneurs trying to get into the space, and we connected and we talked about it. And we talked about the issues. And I said, listen, I think what the industry needs and the sport needs is a platform to discuss its issues. It needs an event. And Dylan sort of said, well, the best time to do it is, in Palisades when, Broken Arrow is on, when Western States is on, the whole industry's together. That's the time for everybody to talk about what's going on. And then, interestingly, at the same time, Brendan Madigan, obviously from Broken Arrow, was reaching out to Dylan about doing an event. So all three of us sort of came together and put on TrailCon.
I would just add, John, that, Doug reached out to me at an important sort of early inflection point, became not only a good friend and collaborator, but also a mentor here. And he's not bragging enough about what he's accomplished during his career. He sort of operates as our sensei on our team. Brendan Madigan, very much the workhorse, I would say. And anyway, the three of us have been really proud to bring this together. And I think just to add a little bit more color to Doug's comment too, is for those who've been around the sport for a long time and who have had the good fortune of traveling around to races all over the world, obviously we know how amazing Western States is, and also similarly like UTMB. And at UTMB and a lot of the European races, there's so much experience that's built around the racing event. And UTMB itself is now basically a trade show, right? Everybody in the industry is there, all the media, all the brands, etc. And Western States, part of its charm is that it's still very small, very grassroots. But as Doug said, the whole industry's there. And why not take advantage of those few days and that quiet period in between Broken Arrow and Western States and try and do something that's positive and proactive and unifying, hopefully, not only for the trail running industry and those of us who make our living within it, but also for the broader community. So that was sort of the original vision and goal of it. And we're thrilled with how it started, and, looking forward to putting on the second edition here in a couple of weeks.
I want to spend a little more time talking about event organizing before we dive into what TrailCon specifically seeks to achieve. But Doug, you've built and sold a 180 show portfolio, right? People crave events. People love getting together. People love, expensing a trip to somewhere lovely and letting their business pay for it. What separates an event that happens and kind of fizzles out from one that people look forward to year after year after year?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the critical things are, I mean, what I've always looked for is, industries or sports in this particular case that are going through massive transition. And that's what we've had with trail running. It's growing really strongly, lots of change. And with that has come, a lot of issues about actually where is the sports going? How can we sustain it? How are people making livings? And, there's lots of opportunities, but there's also lots of threats. And, what we didn't have for the sport was a platform to discuss those issues and talk about, the future, where we're going, and how do we address concerns? How do we keep the growth going? How do we make it more inclusive? And a lot of that debate was happening in the online sphere, which, everybody knows tends to very quickly degenerate into not very civilized debate. And I think the big difference about events is that you meet people face to face. And what we're seeing now, and I think with AI, is that events have become even more important because people actually want to get together. They spend a lot of time at their screens. They're getting a lot of stuff digitally, and more they don't know what is real. And actually, if you go face to face, you're actually seeing real people. So actually, the medium of events, basically its moat now is that face-to-face component versus other media where you're seeing a lot of disruption because of AI. Why do people coming back? Because if you look at what happened in COVID, it got taken away from us. We weren't able to actually meet, and we really then understood the power of meeting face to face. Those chance conversations, and really that's the strength of what we're trying to build at TrailCon, is by getting people together, things happen. Some of those are formal, some of those are informal, but you do not know what's going to happen, and that's why you come to something like TrailCon. Is what don't you know? Who don't you know? What magic can happen just from a chance conversation? And that's what makes events special. And what we've seen basically post pandemic is historically people came to events where there was commerce, where there was education, where there was networking. But more and more, it's become important where people are coming to have fun interactions together. And that's really the secret sauce of events now, that people have got to want to come because they're having a good time, not because they feel they have to. And that's what we're trying to do with TrailCon. And so it's not just a lot of, panel sessions and talking heads. It's about a lot of creating opportunities for people to network, for people to actually go and test product, to get out into the mountains, to talk and have those conversations that's impossible to have over a telephone or over any digital screen. So that's really what we're trying to do. And that's what makes events special, that actually people want to come and have those interactions.
Yeah, you're talking about the intentional serendipity, right? Like creating an environment where wow, it's crazy. We just ran into each other and created this amazing interaction. I had that happen a number of times, and it led to real business outcomes for me and things that moved the needle for me from a partnership standpoint. So it's happening, and similar to what's happening in like the Second Nature Slack group, right? Where you have so many people that are influential or decision makers in the space, and it's bound to lead to these types of opportunities. And so creating more intentionality around those interactions becomes really powerful. Dylan, I want to back up a little bit and ask you, before we go too much further, how do you describe TrailCon? Who should be at it, and why should they spend 3 days in Palisades, outside of the fact that it's like one of the most beautiful places on the in the country?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this, John, because in our year zero event, which was in 2024, it was a single afternoon. We called it the Taste of TrailCon. And there we just hosted, a few hours of panel discussions and then closed with a little bit of a happy hour. And one of the pieces of feedback we got after that year is that it felt like it was an event that was only for the trail running industry. And so we had to be a lot more clear about our messaging about who it's for, right? And really, as we've looked at what we want the product to be and how it could be maximally impactful for the industry and the community, it's really like breaking it into those two parts, right? And wanting to deliver something that is both highly, highly valuable for people like you and I, John, who are deeply immersed in this industry, who like 100% of our business relationships exist within this industry, and like really provide that platform where exactly what you just described can naturally occur, where you have these organic collisions with people, where natural partnerships are struck and new connections are made that may or may not manifest into, new partnerships right away, but at least a seed is planted that can then be nurtured over the long period of time. We know, as Doug just said, trail running is in this massive moment of transition. And therefore, it is important for the industry to get together and talk about what we're doing, where are we going, what are our problems, how can we get ahead of them, how can we like all succeed in this growing but still small industry, right? And then similarly, like the trail running community, as we all know, is the beating heart of why we do this, And so it would be not only a disservice to the sport, but also unintelligent as an event organizer to do something that didn't fully recognize that and also provide a lot of value for the grassroots community as well. And so that's what we're really hoping to do, splitting that difference and having stuff that's both great for people like you and I, John, but also great for the middle and the back of the packer who might have just done Broken Arrow and is going to stick around, or who might have gotten through the lottery at Western States and, wants to really enjoy this potentially once in a lifetime opportunity. And so, for the more community facing stuff, we have a lot of educational content, obviously a big vendor village with activations. It can see products that are being launched from all the brands. Brands have a chance to interact with trail running consumers and develop relationships with them as well. And then, just sort of like creating this energy in a place, really just like bringing everybody together who's already there in a way that's hopefully productive for everybody. And so, that's sort of the original vision of TrailCon, something we're staying true to. But I guess the short answer to your question is that it's for everybody who cares about trail running, everybody who loves the sport. We would love if they would come and attend, and we're confident that they would get some new relationship or insight out of it.
Doug, I'm curious your thoughts on the intentionality and specificity of attendees, right? If we see it all the time when events or brands or products try to be for everyone, they kind of alienate their core. They can alienate their core by going too broad, right? If you're a performance product and you're aiming for everyone, it's going to kind of fizzle out at the front of the pack. If you're a product that serves the needs of different body types, it's not going to work for every single every single body type. How do you do both, or how do you think about this desire to serve the the Dylans and the Johns who, like, I know 80% of the people that show up to TrailCon, and I could do business with all of them. Same thing with Dylan, right? How do you serve that person? And because that's, to me, that's the original core idea of, these are the people that are already here. Let's create something for them, as well as those, as you said, the people that are there for Broken Arrow, and maybe they're pacing a friend at Western States, and they live on the East Coast, so they don't want to fly all the way home and fly back. And so for this one time, they're planning to spend 8-10 days out in Tahoe. How do you keep both of those groups happy?
I mean, the quick answer to it is it's difficult because, it's so broad. And I think, we've had these sort of challenges when we're putting our content together and keeping that sort of, broadness, but also making sure that actually people are getting value. Because if you go too broad, you dilute value. But we're trying to be as inclusive as we possibly can. And I think that we've tried to shape that around the content. For example, on day one, we're trying to be as thought-provoking as we can in terms of the issues within the industry. And I think we're at a very interesting time for the sport, but also for the people who are making livings like, you two in the industry. And that I gave a talk a couple of weeks ago in the event industry, and that, are we basically experiencing on a broader basis the equivalent of, the sub 2 hour marathon? We've seen this with Cocodona. I mean, Cocodona is now the third largest watched event after UTMB in Western States. And that's come from nowhere in a very short period of time on what people would consider as a small niche within trail running. But it's number 3.
Yeah, I had a conversation with an agent who said that Cocodona will not be relevant, or it's some version of that, right? The brands were not interested in 200-mile racing, so by proxy, Cocodona would not be relevant in brand discussions. That statement has to be revised, right? So we're seeing a big change. But again, I'm curious, like,
I think that goes to, the perception that actually, what is niche is actually becoming broad, and therefore developing content around that. I think you've got to bear that in mind, that I think as an industry, we're going through that moment of that sort of 2 hour barrier. And where are we going? I don't think people truly know what that means. It's the disruption coming from AI. Do people really know what disruption that's really going to bring in terms of, product cycles, in terms of different innovations that can happen? So, I mean, I think technology is going to change. Performances are obviously changing as a result of, not only just, new shoes, but also nutrition, etc. So on the back of that, we can take those issues to the second part, which is the enthusiast. The enthusiast wants to understand about the latest products, about nutrition. They want to actually be inspired. So they want to hear from the Rachels of this world who've had this massive breakout at Cocodona. So, and that's really important, that people actually come to TrailCon and feel inspired. And we're trying to keep that as broad as we possibly can, but make sure all the different groups feel that there's something there for them. That's not easy to do, but I think the positive is, at the end of the day, we're all runners and we're all actually doing the same thing. It just might take us different times. And that's the thing that we've got to come back to, that actually pulls the whole sport together. So ultimately, the elites want to actually talk to the elites. The back of the packers want to be inspired by the elites. The brands, like last year, On decided to do their global launch of their trail running shoe at TrailCon. And in very short order, we're seeing a lot of new products that are going to be at TrailCon because people understand the power of the different audiences coming and the fact that the media is going to be there as well. So they can maximize the impact that they're having around their product. And one of the biggest feedbacks that we got from the event last year was that people want more opportunity to buy product at TrailCon, which is a great news for the brands that actually they don't want to hear about it. They want to buy it.
Quick one if you're heading to TrailCon this summer. We're going to be boots on the ground out there with the team from Popfly, our partners who are doing some great work in the creator, affiliate, and UGC space. If leveling up your UGC game is on your list this summer, and let's be honest, it should be, this is a good chance to connect with the right people in person. So if that's you, reach out to me directly and I'll make sure we link up around TrailCon. If you're enjoying Long Run Labs, we'd love it if you took a moment to leave a review. It only takes a minute, but it helps the show reach more people like you. If an episode has helped you think differently about your business or career, made a long run fly by, or taught you something new, scroll down in your podcast app and tap those stars and write a review. Thank you for your support. We're having this moment where there's so much money flooding into running and trail running in particular. And we're seeing, as you were talking about, the explosive growth of the sport. We see more brands and the barrier to entry as a brand is lower than ever, right? You can be a single operator and use AI to develop infrastructure and manage your books and manage products. Like all of these things can be done on a much leaner scale, which means more people are doing it. And the, hey, I have an idea to, hey, I have a product I can sell is, that gap has never been smaller. How do we protect not integrity, but like that heartbeat of trail culture from people who are, or do we need to protect that from people who are just seeing a market opportunity and wanting to capitalize it? And does TrailCon play a role in that conversation?
Yes, 100%. And I'd be happy to take this one if you're okay, Doug. This is something that has been core to our internal discussions as we've been forming the event from the ground up. And our theme from last year, as you might remember, John, was building bridges. And part of that ethos was embracing the future and being excited and optimistic about the future while also protecting where we came from and educating people about trail culture and what the, core values are of the people who participate in this sport, because that really is the special sauce. And if we lose that, personally, I don't have any interest in making my living within the sport anymore. One of the things that we also launched last year is the Trail Running Hall of Fame. This is one of these things that has been percolating in my brain for years, not an original idea, but clearly trail running is emerging into being this global professional sport. And like global professional sports, you need to have a Hall of Fame eventually. And of course, part of our award show, which concludes TrailCon, it did last year and will again this year, is that Hall of Fame induction ceremony. In addition to the Hall of Fame inductions, that we have like a future award and a community impact award, and sort of like honoring, and also we recognize the people who have won Trail Runner of the Year the previous year and Trail Performance of the Year. So in doing that, that's a microcosm of what I'm describing, right? Like we are celebrating these pinnacle athletes of the current moment. We're also looking ahead at like who's the exciting characters that are coming down the line, but also we're really paying attention to like who's making a community impact that has nothing to do with performance. And also like, who are the people from the olden days who a lot of these new folks may have never been introduced to and may not know their legacy? Someone like Matt Carpenter, for example, here in 2026, who has been on a 15-year public appearance hiatus, who is going to be coming to TrailCon not only for a important discussion with Scott Jurek on the first day, Monday, but who is also going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so that, again, is just a representation of us like really wanting to embrace this current moment and be a force of optimism as we move into this exciting next chapter, but also really celebrate those who are making a community impact, and also really celebrate the people who were instrumental in building the sport to the point it's at now. So those are just some examples for how we try to, make it something that does sort of protect that core ethos.
Yeah, and then you have people that bridge both gaps, like both eras, like a Sally McRae, for example, who is instrumental in the 2010s and is still crushing it in the 2020s. And I think she's doing a panel with, or a podcast with Rachel, right?
That's right. Yep. And that is a good example too. Yep.
Yeah, so the idea there is like Rachel is the future of the sport. Sally is currently in the sport, but has been doing it for, decades now. And so she's also on the business and media side of it. I've worked with Sally in a professional capacity, in addition to her being a good friend. Like, these are people that the future, in my opinion, the future of pro athletes will look a lot more like a Sally, who has a competitive side, but also media and distribution, versus a Matt Carpenter who has a VO2 max of 90. And like there weren't media obligations like, in those days, like there were today.
Yeah. Yeah. If I could just say a couple of words on this. Number one, first of all, Sally, we're just really grateful to have her support and buy-in in the way that we have over the last couple of years. She and I actually co-host that award show that I just mentioned together. We did that last year. We're doing it again this year. But she is exactly, the type of person who the community will really benefit from hearing from. I remember in the Taste of TrailCon, she was on a panel that we did that year. And one of the comments that I made is that she's not only built a career in the industry, she's built a business in the industry. And one of the things that I have heard, just by virtue of my job and sort of being in the mix and so close to the core, I would say, is I just get endless inbound from people who want to figure out how to make a living in the sport, right? And people like Sally really provided that blueprint, not only for me, but, who can really provide a blueprint for next generation. She's been so generous with her knowledge and her time, and she provides a great example, and we're lucky to have her back this year.
So how much of that then segues into programming, right? Because it's one thing to demonstrate and put her on a stage and show what it looks like or what it can be, and it's another for her to do a deep dive into like what are the mechanics of this. Or like for someone like me, I quit my job a year ago. I was high earning W-2 at a tech company, right? Like, how does somebody make that leap when there seems to be such a desire for people to do this full time? Yet people like myself, I was stuck in a role, not sure that I could replicate what I was doing there, doing it entirely full time and for myself. You're doing it, you've been doing it, and there are plenty of other examples of this. Like, how do you think about continuing education is the wrong phrasing, but the demonstrable or educational support for people who are wanting to do it? How does that programming come into effect?
A couple of things. Number one, I would come back to kind of where we started, in that organic collisions are the origin story of a lot of businesses, right? And we know this through second nature too. Like, there have been real co-founder relationships and things that have organically transpired just by virtue of people being connected in a digital environment. This is that on steroids in physical space. And so for people who are looking to make a living within the sport, what a better place to start than just by mixing and mingling, developing new relationships, bouncing ideas off one another, and then potentially something sticks, a light bulb turns on in a brain, or maybe multiple brains all at once, and there's an interesting business opportunity or partnership at play there. In terms of like how it shows up in the content, we have a lot of really exciting things going on. We have a panel that is like specifically hearing the voices of product and brand leaders in the space. So if you are somebody who has an idea for a product, or you're managing a new up and coming sort of emerging brand, what a better place to go and meet people and hear from people who've actually done it before and who are a few years ahead of you. We actually have an emerging brands zone too, to really like celebrate the energy that's happening and the entrepreneurial spirit that is really showing up in our sport, and that I think we've all noticed. And so we hope that our attendees and participants will go interact with these young founders who have these ambitious projects and start supporting them from the early phases so that they can develop that foothold in the industry. We're also doing a Second Nature meetup while we're there. So, and that is, just
9 a.m. Wednesday, right?
Exactly. And that's basically like turning the Second Nature Slack into physical space and making it an opportunity for people to get to know each other, to talk about where we're struggling with our businesses or where we're seeing wins, and just like generally spend a little time together. We're still working on exactly what the format of that conversation is going to look like, but those are just a few examples of like, how we want to be of service to people like me 5 or 6 years ago when Doug sent me that DM. Anyway, Doug, I'd love to hear if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I would add that. I mean, I think, having a healthy ecosystem, I think, is really important. And actually, we can't actually have people build careers or new people enter to try and build careers if we haven't got a healthy ecosystem where you've got brands who are seeing the opportunity or seeing the growth, who are then in return going to support, people making a career. And I think that's really important. And I think what we're also seeing in terms of the emerging brands and the growth of the industry, and what we're seeing parallels across other industries, is it's starting to attract capital. Venture capitalists are looking at what's going to be the next big thing, what's the next big brand that's coming. And, I would see, TrailCon as it's developing, hopefully be a place where brands are coming also to attract, if you like, investment to actually continue building the ecosystem so that actually people can see new innovative products, and that in turn will support careers being built. So it all feeds on that, but it does need a healthy ecosystem. And I think, that's really, again, one of the purposes of TrailCon is the platform to try and grow that ecosystem for everybody's benefit.
Doug has obviously been a highly accomplished operator in his time, and is still extremely involved and does a lot of like investment work now in this phase of his career. You and I, John, have started dabbling with things like that. I know you do some investing and advising too. And so maybe it'd be an interesting place for you to comment about like what you're looking forward to about, where you sit in the industry. Are you looking for potential places to invest your capital, like Doug just mentioned, or brands who you could offer your sort of consulting services to?
Well, I was laughing because I was going to make a comment about the Second Nature SPV and the idea of putting together a syndicate. Right. So I've had a lot of conversations lately around this. I started doing some angel investing a couple of years ago, and like you said, doing some advisory work with brands. And my whole thing with that is I don't like the amount of money I'm contributing is not meaningful enough to like move the needle for the company. I want to put that capital into a place where I can give guidance as well. And my real value add, like the investment is buying a seat at the table, but the real value add is the advisory work and the advisory, equity compensation that comes alongside of investment sometimes. TrailCon is a perfect medium for that because you have all of these people that have been doing it for decades, right? And so I was just chatting with Richie Hansen, who's putting together a fund called Ola Capital. It's a $30 million fund one, focused on high performance and brands and services that can move the needle at the elite level, but then also help with human performance and longevity, right? So the idea is that these things that help us do sport and do activities also help move the needle on the obesity crisis and the metabolic dysfunction that's going on in this country and all of these things. And so what better place to have a consortium or like creme de la creme of the brightest minds in the industry, where you have brands, instead of a pitch showcase for raising capital, you have an advisor showcase where you're pitching to have thought partners join you instead of just capital partners, right? And so I've attended a bunch of pitch showcases, and what I always feel is missing, and maybe it's because they already have it, is like, well, who else can help with this beyond the $25,000 check that they can write? So Doug and Dylan as well, like, I'm curious your thoughts on how quickly can we get to a place where there's an investor or advisor or early stage seed company track where you can have this intermingling, but it's less happy hour and more of like speed dating.
We will begin to see that. I think we're at the very early stages of these companies coming. And I mean, I've got an accelerator business in the events industry, so this is what I do as a day job. And what's very clear to me is there's lots of ideas out there in industries generally, but it's very opaque in terms of what to do to get started. It's very opaque in terms of your pathway to find the capital. And what we've done in the events industry is basically look at what is best of breed. Best of breed is the tech industry. The tech industry is very good, not just at actually raising capital, but creating an ecosystem where people can go and get mentored and get guided through the whole process of building their business and creating a network that people can come to and help them go through their issues as they're doing that. And I think, the way forward for trail running would be to create a vehicle like that actually would meet at TrailCon. It would be a place where people could talk and actually exchange ideas and actually get connections to the right people, because a lot of time it's focused on finance, but actually what I find, it's less about finance. It's about actually guidance, what to do next, who to speak to, getting access to people's networks. That's far more valuable for a founder. Capital is obviously important, but it's the other intangibles that people are really looking for. And I think TrailCon is exactly the platform as the industry grows to be able to do that and create the meetups on an annual basis that then can actually, be managed maybe in a more professional way year round.
I think Doug and I's relationship is emblematic of what we want to achieve, right? Where Doug just had good intentions and reached out in the early phases as I was building Free Trail and just offered to help. And now we're great friends and business partners, right? And I aspire to have a similar impact in the sport, and I will happily and generously deliver whatever, advice I can, with my meager level of experience so far in building my business to help, sort of pay that forward in terms of just like sharing experience and making connections with other people who are genuinely showing an interest and an ambition to do something impactful. And I think it comes to something that we probably all resonate with that almost comes back to the core like purpose of TrailCon question. And that is like to create an event that we want to go to, and building the thing for us, right? I think this is a Rick Rubin thing, like build the thing that you want to exist in the world. And chances are there's a lot of people that want something similar. And, I think so far the early evidence is that has been the case with TrailCon, and each of us are coming into it with a different perspective and a different level of experience, but it's all built on the foundation of loving the sport. And for a lot of us, it's built on the foundation of like devoting our lives to the sport and like, how do we do that in the best way that also, creates positive sum impacts that ripple throughout the community and that, admittedly help us pay our bills, but also like set us up for long-term success as a collective as well. So,
Yeah. And there's a bigger mission as well that we want to create a sustainable sport, and a sustainable sport is about creating that ecosystem that I talked about, bringing in these emerging brands, pushing the envelope for the sport. But also it's protecting the areas where we go out and run, and Runners for Public Land. We're helping that a proportion of all the retail sales at TrailCon will go to the Runners for Public Land, because we have got to be proactive in protecting the spaces where we go out and run, not just for today, but for the future.
There's such a discourse on that on the internet these days. And I had Erin Sprague, the CEO of Protect Our Winners, on the podcast last summer, and she talked about the outdoor state. And this is a bipartisan 100+ million, I think it's 150 million group of people that's bigger than any voting bloc that exists for any other domain, right? It's not just trail runners, but it's hikers, it's overland, it's fishing, it's hunting, it's things that span both aisles or both ends of the political spectrum. And so creating those bridges, Dylan, to your point earlier, where you don't have to agree with everything that everyone believes, but we can unite and align on certain parts of what's important to people. Because if we don't have that part of it, we can't do if the 30 miles of protected trail doesn't become available for Western states, what happens to Western states, right? There's so many pieces that go into our ability to access these trails.
And it's really important. And I mean, just to give you some other analysis around this within the sport generally, I mean, through one of my other investments, I own the largest sports and outdoor trade show in the world. It's called ISPO. And we've got a very powerful platform, and we give €1 million a year to these projects to keep these spaces available for our sport to grow. And the problem that we're seeing in North America is that there isn't a unifying association or platform that's actually capable of coalescing the industry together to support that. And through TrailCon, that is one of our ambitions, and that's why we're working with Runners for Public Land, is to be the platform that over time, as we grow, that we can actually help put more money into actually creating and protecting these spaces. So that's our long-term ambition. We've done it in Europe with ISPO, and I would love, as we grow, to build on that in North America.
What does that look like? How do you tactically do that? Is it long and slow over time? Is it a short, fast sprint to assemble the pieces?
Well, I think that it is a slow process. I mean, we're having our second proper edition of TrailCon this year. I would politely say we're still in the investment phase of the event. It would be lovely that the event was sustainable, and that is our goal, because if we have a sustainable platform, we can do a lot more. And that we need the support of the industry, and that's why bringing in the brands is really important, and we've had huge support from the brands, and actually bringing in tomorrow's brands is really important, and that's why we're doing what we're doing with these emerging companies and supporting them and making sure that they get the platform to grow. So to answer your question, I think it probably will be slow. But you've got to start, you've got to have that ambition, or it will never happen.
This reminds me of another curiosity I had, or a parallel curiosity. So there's a tension between free and community events, and one that you have to pay $500 a ticket for. You've chosen the free to attendees model, which is supported by sponsors. But I wouldn't even call the brands sponsors. I would call them partners, right? They're launching shoes. They're putting on really fun activations like what Precision does with the 50-meter dash. Um, how do you think about the business model so that TrailCon survives past this early partner kind of honeymoon phase when people are really excited about it and create it into something durable and long lasting?
Well, I think that the element that we're looking at is the traditional sort of like trade show. You have the booths and people are selling products, but I think that that will achieve a certain amount. But actually, what are the brands really looking for? They're really looking for engagement around their products, and activations, I think, are really important to demonstrate, and getting out into the mountains and doing exciting things. And what Precision are doing, last year, with the TrailCon 100, as we call it, it was a huge moment of excitement. It got a lot of, social coverage, and, we're repeating that again this year, on the Wednesday lunchtime, so it'll be an exciting feature, a lot of energy there. So it's doing more of that, more engagement, and giving the brands more return than just sort of, if you like, a static booth. And that's going to be the growth. And it's going to get more people there because people will want to be more active and do more exciting things rather than just, I think we've got to give a menu that, people come to be educated, they come to do the networking, all the things I talked about, the commerce bit of people wanting to buy product. But the activations and the motivations, I think, are going to be the things that are going to propel what's happened. When we've just had, the Outside Festival, and again, that's been a huge success, and a new entrant. It's the second edition, and that is showing the appetite for people to come and engage, and that's what we're trying to do, is create excitement and get engagement.
I would just add something here on the question of business model and stuff. Something that Doug, I think you said after last year's event, Doug, it was something to the effect of like, making money is important insofar as it allows you to keep going, right? And the thing that's different about TrailCon, as somebody who's also a race director myself, is that, yeah, it is free for people to come. Therefore, we don't collect quote unquote registration fees like you would at a racing event, which does admittedly narrow your monetization opportunities. It therefore narrows the path for you to keep going, right? And so it is extremely important for us to have partnerships with the brands in the space who really do spin the whole flywheel to keep us all employed. And to our sponsors who have believed in that vision, we are extremely, extremely grateful. But similarly, our desire is to have a positive impact. And insofar as we are successful in that aim, we are confident that we will emerge from this quote unquote investment phase of TrailCon, and it will be a self-sustaining thing that can have a very long-term and durable shelf life in the space that ultimately creates a lot of positivity in the sport. So we're still admittedly tinkering and figuring out the business model. I think it's fair to say, and I'm sure Doug would agree.
Absolutely, and we've made a deliberate decision to do that. And, I think that the danger, like anything in life, if you make it a free model, are the consumer of that model going to value it as much as if they're paying $500? And that's our challenge, is that, for people to value it as much as if they were paying, and that they're really engaged, and then they're coming with the same intent as if they had paid that $500. That's really our challenge. But it was a conscious decision because we wanted to make it inclusive, not exclusive. And people hopefully will respect that and support us as we go along. And people have been very kind and donated as well, where they felt they've had value. And it's just part of everybody coming together to actually make this a sustainable platform.
Doug, I know you're in Dubai, so it's getting into the evening. So if you have to jump, feel free to jump. Really appreciate the conversation so far, and looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks here.
Not at all. No, it's been a pleasure to speak. And Jonathan, look forward to seeing you in less than 3 weeks' time. And it's going to be an exciting event, and look forward to seeing lots of people there and having a great time and enjoying themselves.
Awesome. Likewise, Dylan. If you have a few more minutes, I have some more topics to cover with you.
Yeah, happy to.
One of the pieces that is critical in healthy and successful brand partnerships, in my opinion, is uniqueness and doing things that are uniquely that brand. So I was a part of Mount to Coast's Double Boston campaign. I don't feel any other running brand could have come into the Boston Marathon and turned it into an ultra like Mount to Coast could. There are other examples of brands showing up in ways that are unique to them. And I wrote a piece coming out of that on Substack that was effectively like, there's so much noise out there. If you and your brand activation, if you could just swap out the logo and let somebody else execute it, and it doesn't look any different, you're contributing to the noise. So how do you feel that you have a responsibility or is there a mechanism in place for any of these brands that want to get involved to help them or co-create something that is unique to that brand?
Yes, absolutely. And totally empathize with your sentiment and how important that is. And in this day and age, everybody's looking for a way to, capture some attention, but do so in a way that isn't cringe, quote unquote, right? And certainly we want to do whatever we can to help brands achieve that aim. At the end of the day, it is the brands that make TrailCon possible, and therefore, and who, again, like they start the flywheel that keeps us all employed and that keeps the sport on the right track. Like their success is our success. And, to that extent, we're super happy to co-develop, co-create some of these concepts. Brendan, who's not on the call here, Brendan Madigan, who again is our third partner on the event and really the catalytic force behind everything. He manages all the partnerships more or less. And, he would be a better voice to speak to exactly what that looks like. But yeah, certainly like we want to deliver opportunities for brands at TrailCon to have an authentic and memorable connection with the attendees and participants. Just one example is the Tram Jam that we do with On, who's our title sponsor, and again, who is the earliest sort of believer in the long-term potential of TrailCon. And that last year was just so fun. It was this beautiful, picturesque morning in the Tahoe area. We all ran up to the top of the escarpment, which is of course iconic because of the Western States 100. And then many people, including myself, ran back down to High Camp, which is about the midpoint on the mountain, and then took the tram back down into the village. And in that tram, there's a DJ like playing, energizing music early in the morning. Of course, there's like coffee and snacks and things like that to keep people energized up on the mountain. But it ended up being like just a super fun and energizing place. I ended up running with Floris Gierman from Path Projects on the way up the mountain. And yeah, like just a really fun brainstorming session that, didn't manifest into anything like super material, but deepened a relationship with Floris and, further emphasize the admiration that I have for what he does in the space. And that's just but one example of like an organic collision that just like makes you feel good and, is downstream of what you're talking about with these brand activations. So certainly something we're prioritizing at TrailCon.
You've talked a lot about On and some of the other early partners who believed in you and your team in building this. I've spent a lot of time selling a dream before it becomes reality. And whether that's with Colin Quigley's Meridia or the Trail House here in Colorado, trying to create partnerships before there's a thing that exists. And I have a really hard time doing this. And so the way I do it is I create my own effectively sales enablement material via writing on Substack of like, here's the thing, here's what you can be a part of, and here's why it's important. Short of doing that, like how did you get that buy-in from big brands like On before something actually exists?
You know, looking back on it and reflecting a little bit, I do view it as so fortuitous. We got very lucky. Really what happened was at the Taste of TrailCon, that half-day event we did in 2024, David Kilgore sat on one of our panels. And David Kilgore has since left On, but for a long time, he was the head of outdoor strategy. He managed their athlete team in the trail running space. And of course, he's kind of like a renaissance man in the sport. And I think he's got great taste. And he recognized what we were trying to do. And it was through him, evidently, the story goes, who, made the sales pitch to his internal colleagues at On saying, we should be a part of this thing. And as Doug mentioned, it is a platform upon which they launched the Cloud Ultra Pro, which has been their flagship trail running shoe. It's an amazing, awesome product. But short of that, like who knows if TrailCon would even exist at this point? Like it really was that early belief from On that, set the foundation for last year being a success. And because last year was a success, we're able to do it again, like I just mentioned. And, as we continue to build the reputation of the event, of course, we hope to get more and more belief from more and more of the brands in the space. That's certainly started to become true, and On has really led the charge. We're super grateful.
Well, I'm excited to get back out there. This podcast will be out well in advance of TrailCon this year. So my closing question is, what is the call to action for people who are attending TrailCon, or if they still haven't decided on attending TrailCon, why should they attend? Those are, I guess, two questions. We'll start with the first one. What is your call to action for people attending? And I guess this whole podcast was, why should people attend? So we'll just stick to the first one.
Sure. So yeah, again, we've sort of mentioned the whole vision here. So, I guess just to closing thoughts to hopefully inspire people to get involved, if not this year, then in years to come, is like we all know the life-changing nature of the sport. Of course, through Free Trail, a lot of people know our sort of mission and tagline is trail running will save the world. And we want to create an event that has that energy that you can't help but feel positive, not only about the sport, but about the nature of humanity once you leave. And again, develop friendships, partnerships, new relationships that, as we know, through this sport become some of the most important things to, us as human beings. Just to elicit some FOMO, I'll list off some of our featured speakers this year because I have it up in front of me, but we're extremely excited to have Rich Roll coming, who will need no introduction. He'll be in dialogue with Katie Scheid, arguably one of the greatest athletes over the last 10 years in the sport. We're also having Travis Tigert, the CEO of USADA, sort of the leading anti-doping figure in the sport. Most people know him for the Lance Armstrong case, but of course we want to get in front of any potential doping issues in the sport. And so we really hope that conversation is impactful. We already mentioned Sally McRae, Rachel Entrekin, Scott Jurek, Tommy Runs, Tim Tollefson, Matt Carpenter, Cal Calamia, Monica DeVries, the founder and CEO of Rabbit, Topher Gaylord, Caleb Olson, Natasha Machado from World Athletics as we start thinking about the Olympics conversation, Yeti Zhang from Mount to Coast. So a great mix of founders, operators, media people, athletes, race directors, content creators, agency people. Again, we really hope to deliver something of value for everybody in the community, no matter what perspective you bring to the event. And again, it's all free and open to the public, and registration is available at trailconference.com. .com. And if you can't make it this year, put it on your calendar in 2027.
What is that one thing to tell people who are coming? What do you want them to know?
What I would want them to know is that we put our heart and soul into this, and we really care that it's a good thing. And as Doug said, we're still very much in the investment phase of this. And to this point, it has been a labor of love for us, and we want it to continue to exist in the world. And the only way that we can is to make sure that everybody who comes this year really enjoys it. And that is our number one priority. And so for everybody who does attend, we really hope that comes across, that we really do care, and we want you to have a good time. We want it to be valuable.
Awesome. Dylan, appreciate this. Listeners, if you will be there, I will be there. Let's meet. Would love to meet you. And we'll see you in Palisades.
Second Nature Meetup. We'll see you there.
Love it. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Long Run Labs. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building something of their own. We'll be back next Tuesday with more stories at the intersection of endurance and entrepreneurship from the people shaping the outdoor industry in ways big and small. Until then, keep showing up, keep asking questions, and we'll see you out there.